is how to raise money in Baltimore, so I should probably talk about that a little bit more directly. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the valuation concept and kind of what's happening in the world and kind of what you should be aware of. And I'll do that for 10 minutes to get to 9 o'clock. And then maybe let's do 15 minutes of Q&A.
It's up to you.
And then, I do have a family. I got two little ones.
Yeah, we've only paid you until 9:30.
I actually paid for the pizza, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
So
so
you
much.
can leave whenever you want.
So in terms of my time, so we'll do like 15-minute Q&A, and then I'll kind of stick around till like 9:30, and then whatever you guys do after that is just on you, but I'm going to probably take off at 9:30. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, are we good with that?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay. So Neil asked a question, and I did not answer it, but I should answer it. So you want to know, where did I raise money from, and kind of, where did I, so I told you my sort of horror story, so I'm going to leave the name of that investor out of it, and again, it's the circumstances, so it's not like it was anything personal. You should just be aware that, you can get into a situation where you have this note and you have a debt, and you can create some problems for yourself. I did do the friends, family, food, so my family, my parents invest in me, a number of close personal friends, people that kind of knew me from the industry put some money in. And then when we went to the Series A, so I pitched specifically to angel investors for my Series A. And we should probably also do like sort of a nomenclature discussion, right? Because one of the things that's like, is it a seed? Is it a Series A? Right? So in general, your seed round is going to be, you've got minimum viable product, you put in as much money as you personally can, you've probably got some friends, family, and fools money, and you find a guy, right, or maybe 2 or 3 people that are willing to put some money in to kind of get you to the next stage. So that's typically your seed round. A normal seed is probably going to be between, it could be as low as 50, but 50 feels to me more like, friends, family, and fools kind of, it's probably more like 250 to 500 is a seed round, right? Maybe it's 750. Now, that's been my experience. Now today, I've heard people that are like nonchalantly like, we raised a seed round of like 2 million. So when I hear that, I just immediately think like, on what possible valuation did you do that? Or, good for you, you convinced somebody to give you a convertible note for 2 million. I have no idea how, but God bless you. And so the other thing is, now with these notes, there are some language you should be aware of. A note can have a cap. So a cap means that you're putting an upper threshold on what the valuation is, so the investor is protected on the upside and on the downside. With a note, if you go out of business and you fail, you owe them the money back. Whether you can pay it back or not is a discussion you should have with the person who gives you the note. But in theory, you owe them the money personally, and you will have to pay it back, right? So they're generally sort of protected on the downside. If you do go out of business, there's some liquidation event or whatever, they're going to get their money out first, and to the extent that there is any money that can be gotten out. They're protected on the upside, which is like a lot of times if they're not sure that they think there's a valuation, they'll say, look, I'll loan you the money, I want a 20% discount on the next round, and I want a cap on the valuation of the next round of, let's say, $2 million. So let's say that you do go gangbusters, stuff really takes off, and you get an investor who says, look, I'll give you $4 million on an $8 million valuation, right? So if they just had a 20% discount, then they would get 20% off of whatever that $8 million valuation is. So, but if you have a cap, then it means that they're going to pay 20% or value it as if it was $2 million. So in that instance, they're getting not 20% off, they're getting it at 20% of whatever the next investors do. Now, the challenge that you have is when you go to raise money, if there's a cap in place, depending on the time frame and the risk level of when you raise that money to when the new money comes in, you could be hurting yourself on the valuation. So you may raise, let's say you raise money with a $2 million cap, and 6 months later, magical things have happened, and like the sales are there, and all this stuff is there to support a higher valuation. But the new investor can come in and say, look, you just raised on a $2 million cap, now you're trying to tell me you're worth 8. I don't buy it, right? You're really only 6 months into it. I'll tell you what, I'll do you a favor, I'll tell you it's worth 2.5 million, right? And so you can potentially hurt yourself if you have this cap, but the investors might insist on it so that they're protected on the upside. Does this all make sense? So these are just things you should be aware of, like when can it hurt you? Now, at some point in your career, you will probably just need to take the money because you have no choice. You should always be careful when that happens, but you know, at the end of the day, you do what you have to do. So, anyways, when you go to your A round is usually going to distinguish itself either because it's led by an institutional investor, or it can be led by angels or a particular investor, but the dollar size is usually 2 million and up, like 2 to, like I said, I hear A rounds going up to 8 or even 10 million. And at that point, it's sort of sequential. So a typical A round might be like 2 to 4 million, 2 to 5 million, so typical today. And then a B round would be, you know, usually it's going to be double or triple that again. The thing that primarily is going to differentiate your A round and your B round are the terms themselves, right? So, you know, what the new investor's paying and whether, you know, there's substantially different parameters. So like, you might raise money in January 2013 and you call it an A round, but then let's say you run out of money. Business may move forward, but you didn't get the traction you thought, you need to raise some more money. So you can either reopen your round, which you just take the same exact documents, it's much cheaper, right? And you may be 10 months in and say, well, I have all these wonderful things happen. They're like, yeah, but you're running out of money, so, you know, you reopen the round, right? You use the same exact documents, maybe the same existing investors, you get a couple new investors, you raise some more money, it may be 10 months later, but still considered the same round. Or you can do like an A1, where maybe the parameters are altered slightly, you know, maybe it's a slightly different valuation, so then that would be like an A1. Does that make sense? Okay, so just nomenclature.
Generally speaking, A rounds are usually associated with venture capital firms.
Right, or savvy investors. So I raised my A round.
Exception, super angels or savvy.
Yeah, so I raised my A round from it was lead, and when somebody uses the term lead, so one of the things that you should know is investors are like lemmings, right? You need one investor to jump off the cliff, and then hopefully you can get other investors to jump off the cliff with them. And you know, you can have, this is why it's a full-time job. It's like herding cats, right? You'll have like 5 investors and they're all like, I really like it, I just want to see a little bit more traction, and they all just want to see a little more something. Until eventually, you kind of move them all forward, and in the meantime you're trying to move the product forward. And eventually someone will say, you know what, we're going to lead. So when an investor says that they're going to lead, what that means is that they're going to work with you to make you an offer, to set the terms of a deal that you could then potentially use to bring in other investors if that investor is not going to fund you to the entirety that you're looking for. So let's say you're trying to raise $2 million, you may get an organization, so one of the regional ones is TEDCO, and like the Propel Fund, right? Baltimore centric, I gotta say thank you, Ron, from the back here. So they're one of my investors, right? So they actually led my bridge round in 2013, right? So they said, we like this guy, we like what he's doing, he's got traction. He's trying to raise, at the time it was, let's say, $1 million. That fund will not do $1 million, but they would do up to like 200,000. So they said, okay, well, we'll put 200,000 in towards the $1 million, but we'll work with you to set the terms. So then they cover all the legal, you get everything hashed out and negotiated with them. You can now take this paperwork, this term sheet from this known investor, and you can go to other investors and say, I now have a term sheet, I have a lead, I'm definitely going to get 250,000. My goal is to raise $1 million, but I need to raise at least 500,000, so I need to get some more investors on. But it's a much easier discussion because it's all negotiated, and someone they know and trust has sort of vetted the deal, right? So it's an easier discussion to have. So my A round is led by Blue Venture Investors, which is a Northern Virginia-based group of angels, roughly 35 or so, I believe. So they negotiated the terms of my A round and made me sort of the initial offer. They told me what they would commit. They then kind of utilized their network of friends and other investors they knew to bring on the additional money, and then I continued to pitch on my end and use my network to bring money in. The one thing that's interesting that I will say that's a differentiator between an angel group and a VC is that if an angel group says that they'll lead, and you're asking for like $2 million, and they say they'll lead and they'll do $250, what they mean is that they're sort of saying the terms for you to raise up to $2 million, but they may not necessarily have the wherewithal to actually get you the full $2 million. Like I thought, I got a lead, I've got $2 million. I didn't have that. I had to go pitch and continue to pitch. And with an angel group, they'll bring in dozens of people. So you may have to do the dog and pony show for like 6 more months, to convince people to still come in under these terms.
And did you get the 250 paid up early
No,
on? You gotta
absolutely.
wait till the end.
You gotta
right?
wait till, right, you gotta wait.
So you get the total amount.
Till you get a minimum amount. So they'll say, we'll do 250, you have to raise at least 750, we'll provide for you to raise up to 1250 or whatever the number is. So it's a process that is a little different if you're led by an institutional VC. But the VC generally, if they say, we're going to lead and put $2 million in, they generally know where the $2 million is coming from. Either they have it, or they know that they can put like, $1 million in, and they got 2 other VCs that they always do deals with that go to them. And it's a lot less dog and pony show, and a lot less effort on the part of the founder. So that would be the one sort of pro, I would say, with the VC versus angels. The con potentially is that the VC may take more control. They may insist on greater, greater control at the management level or the board. So you just, you never know, right? You got these are all negotiation points.
And it's good to have options. So if you have potential sources and can compete, even if it's informal, it's much better than if you're at the mercy of only one firm.
Yeah. So Blue is great. Blue, I would say, has been a good partner, good investor. With my initial round, like I said, I got a bunch of other individuals, some other angels groups. So Baltimore Angels participated, a number of individual investors. My 2013 bridge round was led by TEDCO, included the Maryland Venture Fund. And then with some follow-on participation by Blue and some other individuals that I knew. And then the round that I most recently raised was led largely by a London-based investor who's the former CEO of a hedge fund, and included, in addition to him, it included Kevin Blake's family fund and a couple other individual investors as well. So I have actually avoided institutional money for the most part, and I have some reasons for doing that. The primary one being that when you raise from angels and individual investors, you really do have much more sort of a personal relationship with them. So, for the most part, I think that I've performed, and I think my investors are happy, and because I've done that, and because they are happy, I have a little bit more latitude than I might otherwise have if I had gone a VC route. This is a generalization that may actually not be true, but that's what been my feeling and kind of the direction we've gone.